Hello, I'm Brittany Marshall. On this edition of Commuter Connections, we'll break down how MDOT is investing in the state of good repair of its assets and systems. We'll talk to one of Mass Transit Magazine's top 40 under 40, who just happens to be a key leader in planning and programming at the agency. We'll learn the history of women in the steel industry through an exhibit at the Museum of Industry. And Professor Verne will join us to explain how the light rail catenary system works. All here on Commuter Connections. Investing in the state of good repair of our systems and assets is critical for MDOT to deliver safe, reliable, efficient, and customer-focused services. Recently, the agency finished a state of good repair track work project for Metro Subway. And later this spring and summer, light rail will begin track work. To tell us more about our state of good repair projects and how we fund them, we talked to our Deputy Administrator, Holly Arnold. Holly, thank you so much for joining us on the show. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. It's good to talk to you.
Could you tell me exactly how important is state of good repair for any transit agency to continue to stay safe?
So state of good repair is incredibly important for a transit agency. The most important thing is to have safe, reliable service for our riders. When we invest in state of good repair, and that includes, routine maintenance and more larger capital projects, it allows us to, rehab things that are worn out, replace things that are past their useful life and are worn out, and run that safe and reliable system. So, breakdowns still can and do happen, but it really helps to ensure that they happen less and to make sure that we have that safe system for everyone.
And so, Holly, for MDOT, many of the projects, especially with the rails, have been in the past few years. Can you tell us why?
Yeah, so it has a lot to do with the age of our system. So, for example, our metro system is 38 years old. Our light rail system is a little over 25 years old. So, similar to things in your own home, as they age, they need more rehab and things need to be replaced. So a lot of the things that we're seeing right now in our metro system include interlocking replacements. So interlockings are kind of like the X's that allow the trains to cross between tracks. They're pretty complex, actually, and there's a lot that's involved with each one. And so we're replacing those because they are now reaching the end of their useful life, that they're starting to get worn out, and we want to ensure that they're safe. For light rail, a lot of the things that we're seeing are grade crossing replacements. And so grade crossings are where the tracks intersect with cars. And so they get more wear and tear. And so, again, we need to make sure that they're safe for both the cars that are crossing and for our riders on the trains.
And our state of good repair projects, there are rails, vehicles, and stations, correct?
Yeah, so we use FTA categorizes our state of good repair into several different categories. So they say vehicles, and so that's both our revenue vehicles, and also we have a huge amount of non-revenue vehicles that people just don't see. So, we own tow trucks, we own high rail vehicles that allow us to do maintenance on our system. So it includes all of those things. We have guideway, and so guideway includes not just the tracks, but the tunnels and the bridges that the systems operate on. Facilities. So again, the maintenance facilities that folks aren't seeing, but are so critical to allowing us to keep our system in a state of good repair. Stations, but things that people are more used to seeing, that includes our passenger stations for rail and our bus shelters. And then finally, systems. Again, things that aren't seeing, those invisible IT systems that are really crucial to allowing us to communicate with passengers and to have that safe system.
Like you mentioned, there are a few projects that people just don't see at all and don't notice. Can you tell us some of those most recent projects that people just haven't noticed or seen, but have been in the works with MDOT?
Yeah, so we do a lot of fun, exciting stuff with, vehicles and whatnot that people do get to see, but there are so many things that happen behind the scenes. One big one right now that we're almost through with completing is the Kirk Bus Division. So our Kirk Bus Division was over 6 years old. It was one of our smallest divisions and wasn't super efficient and not in a state of good repair. We are in the process of replacing that. A couple years ago, we completed the maintenance facility. So we have a brand new state-of-the-art maintenance facility that is way more efficient than it was before and allows us to maintain our vehicles. And this spring, we're going to be completing the operations facility. So it's a huge facility going to allow us to have all of our buses undercover, which is better for the community, and will allow us, as we move forward with zero emission vehicles, to be able to charge them and have a better system there.
And moving into vehicles, what does MTA have in store?
So we've been making huge investments in vehicles over the past few years. Some of the biggest projects, actually, the biggest procurement in MTA history is MTA's Metro rail car replacement and signal system. So as I mentioned previously, our Metro system is 38 years old. That means the rail cars are 38 years old and time to be replaced. So we're going to be getting 78 brand new state-of-the-art rail cars and a new signal system. So that's a $460 million investment, a huge investment in rail cars there that's going to make a big difference. We're also about halfway through overhauling our light rail vehicles. And so with that, it's kind of interesting. They essentially take it all the way back to the car shell and replace a lot of the systems on the vehicles. So new floors, new signs, and new communication, plus a lot of things for the operators to make it easier for them. We're doing a similar project with our Mark III rail cars. So we're doing an overhaul there. And then finally, we've talked about this before, but for the first time in a very long time, MTA has a 5-year contract to replace our buses. So it's a $212 million contract, and that means that for 5 years through 2024, we get 70 new buses every year.
Well, as those projects continue to come up, as people have more questions, where can they find information as, of course, MTA continues to try to keep their assets and systems in a state of good repair?
Yeah, so we have a lot of information on our website. We have our capital needs inventory that was published in 2019 and is regularly updated. It includes information on the types of projects that we invest in and details on how we prioritize. With constrained funding, we do have to prioritize, and we focus a lot on safety and security for our riders.
Well, thank you so much, Holly. I really appreciate it. Thanks for joining the show.
And thanks for having me.
In the previous segment, we discussed the upcoming State of Good Repair light rail project set for this spring and summer. But to give us a little bit more details on exactly what's going to happen in that project, we welcome to the show MTA's Manager of Construction, Andrea Newmeyer. Thank you again for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me back. I really appreciate it as well.
Could you tell me and explain a little bit into detail about exactly what will happen during this light rail project?
Sure. So we're doing a little bit of everything on the light rail system. We're going to start by doing reconstructing 3 interlockings, one just south of the North Avenue station, one just north, and then one over by Mount Royal. And we're also going to be reconstructing some curved sections of our track as well. And lastly, we're going to be replacing the concrete ties that the rails sit on, as well as the ballast or the stone that they're on as well.
And where exactly will this happen? Like in my terms of what a customer would think of, where exactly is this happening?
Sure. So a couple different locations. We're going to be working just north of North Avenue. So the North Avenue station is going to be affected. And we're also going to be working down at the Mount Royal station. And finally, we're going to be doing some work up by the Camden Yard station as well, kind of close to Conway Street and West Camden Street.
So could you tell me exactly how long will this project last? That's a big question that people want to know.
Oh, yes. Always what everyone wants to know. This work is scheduled to last 120 days. That's 60 days on each track that we're going to be single tracking. And we anticipate starting in early May and then going through the summer.
And expected to start later spring.
Correct. Early May is when we're looking at getting started and lasting through the summer. Yes.
And you talked about working at certain stations. How will it impact our riders?
So I believe that riders are going to see some increased headway. Obviously, we're working to structure these repairs in a way that impacts our patrons as little as possible, because that's our overall goal. So that's why I always encourage our patrons to check our Facebook page and our website so that they can get up to the minute information on things that might affect their travel to and from their destinations.
And as we talk about this upcoming project, we recently just had a Metro subway project. Can you tell us a little bit about what exactly happened during that project?
Sure. So similar to the work that we're getting ready to start on light rail, and that is the reconstructing of these 3 interlockings, we recently did the same in the 2 interlockings, one at Charles Center and one at State Center. And these interlockings is what really allows us to move the trains onto different tracks and in either direction. So, it's really important work that we're doing, both upcoming on the light rail and what we just finished on the Metro.
And again, you talked a little bit about our Facebook page. Tell us more how people can get information.
Facebook page, website. I know that there will be signage out to notify our patrons of the upcoming work as well. I'm sure there'll be station announcements as well. Again, we know it's important that our patrons know what's going on and how our work is affecting them, and we really take that into consideration as we're in this planning phase to gear up to start.
How important is this project for MDOT-MTA?
It's very important. We've been running our trains on our light rail system safely, and we always are endeavoring to continue to do so. And so by replacing these interlockings and replacing these curved sections, one thing we're doing on these curved sections is we're replacing the restraining rail. And that's really important because that's what keeps the trains on the tracks. So we want to make sure that we're keeping our tracks, up to the safest possible for all of our patrons moving forward. So this maintenance and these reconstructions are important.
Thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Not a problem. Thanks again for having me.
Coming up next, you'll meet one of MDOT-MTA's best, who has been recognized as a top 40 under 40 in transit. MDOT-MTA is proud to be an agency filled with hardworking and dedicated women. One of those women is our Director of Planning and Programming, Kate Sylvester. She was recently recognized as one of the top 40 under 40 in transit by Mass Transit Magazine. We welcome her to the show to learn more about her impact on our agency. So Kate, congratulations on your award. We are so proud of you here at MDOT-MTA. Tell us, how does it feel to be a top 40 under 40 in transit?
Oh, thank you, Brittany. It feels great, It was really a surprise, not something I was expecting by any means. I just am really thankful for the recognition, and I'm feeling good about it. Thank you.
You have a major role in the planning and development for the present and the future for MDOT-MTA. Tell us about what you do.
So my job is Director of the Office of Planning and Programming at MTA, and our office is involved in a huge range of things. So it varies from, coordinating on policy to developing projects from, just an idea until they're ready to really move into detailed engineering. We do a lot of data analysis. We do a lot of outreach with the public. So it's a whole lot of different things, which keeps it fun and interesting. Right now, we're working on developing the state's first ever 50-year statewide transit plan. So really big thinking and outreach across the state with that, which is very exciting. And then we are also doing things that are a lot more sort of, in the details, with lots of data about everything, that all the assets that MTA owns, making sure that we are making wise investment decisions with how we're spending our resources to keep all of that in good working condition.
And how did you even get into transportation?
So I started in an engineering program when I went to undergrad, and didn't, I just started really enjoying taking transit. I went to college in Chicago and started taking the L into town and walking around and just getting to know the city, and just really fell in love with the freedom that gave me and the ability to be spontaneous. So then I started, diving into it more and taking classes in transportation and classes in history of American cities, and really understanding how all those pieces fit together. So that by the time I got my undergraduate degree, I knew that transportation planning was, my passion, and that's where I've been in my entire career.
So tell us more how you got to MDOT-MTA in your career.
I've been with the Maryland Department of Transportation for about 10 years now. I started as a community planner in the secretary's office. I was working on bicycle and pedestrian work, coordinating on land use and transit-oriented development, that kind of thing. I created the Maryland Bikeways grant program there, which was a really exciting initiative, really fun to be in at the ground level of that.
What advice would you give a young girl or woman who wants to get into transportation and wants to have a career like yours?
I mean, I have been really lucky from the very start of my career to have women mentors to look up to in this field. And I currently work with some really fantastic women So I feel like this is a great place to be supported and to have a network of women to work with. And it's such a broad field. There is a place for every skill set in transportation. And if you are someone who likes to solve problems, who likes to, work for, the rider, the person out there that's trying to just, accomplish their daily tasks, and you're motivated by trying to make that work a little bit better, then, this is a really good field to be in.
And you talked about being there for the people. What type of impact would you like to make here at M.MTA?
I guess I really want to help transit continue to be viewed as an asset and become even more of an asset in our city and in our region and in our state. Something that provides a dignified experience, gets you where you need to go on time, gives people that sense of freedom and spontaneity that, I really enjoyed when I first got to know transit. So I think a lot of the work that we're doing right now is taking us in the right direction, but I've got a full career ahead of me. There's always going to be more of this work to do. So that's exciting too.
Again, congratulations on the award. We are proud of you here at M.MTA. Continue the good work. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Brittany.
Now it's time to learn some history about women who broke barriers in the steel industry in Baltimore. They are being honored with an exhibit at the Baltimore Museum of Industry. To learn more about the women of steel, we welcome to the show the museum's Director of Marketing and Events, Claire Mullins. Claire, thanks again for joining us. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Could you tell me, what is the importance of this Women of Steel exhibit?
Sure. So the Women of Steel exhibition was created at the same time that cultural institutions all over the country were looking to be a part of the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment, giving women the right to vote. And we thought a deep dive into the women who worked at the Bethlehem Steel mill here in Baltimore would be a really interesting topic.
So how did this idea come about to talk about the women of Bethlehem Steel?
So as we started diving into local texts, local books, we started watching films, we attended some union meetings, we started to see certain topics emerge, things like good pay, dangerous work, harassment, fellowship, childcare struggles, a lot of the same struggles and challenges that women face today, especially during COVID. And at the Baltimore Museum of Industry, we don't have a full-time curator on staff. So myself and 6 other staff members created this exhibit. It represented people from the Archives and Collections Department, Education, Marketing, and we all came together and sort of fleshed this out. It was a very exciting project for us to work on. And so we decided to do something that we'd never done before, which was simply to take the exhibition outside. So we installed the exhibition, we reimagined it as an outdoor exhibit, and we put it on the gates of our campus here in South Baltimore. It is free, it is open to the public, and it's fantastic.
And tell me, when someone looks at the exhibit, what can they find? What information will they get of the Women of Steel?
So it's 10 different panels that are about 8 feet wide, mostly featuring photographs. I think we have 22 photographs. 11 are historic and 11 are contemporary, as well as photographs of a couple different artifacts like work badges, pins that say Women of Steel that women wore during their shifts. And basically what you'll see is it's not an all-encompassing historic look at Women of Steel. What it is basically sort of snippets of stories from the women themselves. We took first-person histories and divided it up into some of the topics we talked about before, which were, harassment, pay, working conditions, camaraderie. And so what you'll get is a look at what life was like working in a steel mill from the perspective of the women themselves.
And where did you find the information for these first-person accounts? It's pretty major. Where did you find this information?
That's a great question. We actually, in some of the cases, we went to women themselves to do, to sort of talk to them, get oral histories, and figure out what life was like. We also worked with some books that were written by local people, including like Deborah Rudisil, who is a local historian, Bill Barry, who's a local labor historian. And so there is a lot of information out there. And then what we did was couple it with photographs, both from our own collection at the Baltimore Museum of Industry, as well as the collection that TradePoint Atlantic has given us. And they are major supporters of this project.
And so for people to be able to see this exhibit, where exactly are you all located? And of course, you already said it's free.
It is free. So the Baltimore Museum of Industry is located on the south side of the Inner Harbor, right on Key Highway, out towards Locust Point. And the exhibition is mounted on the fencing right outside the museum. And it's open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You can see the exhibit. It's free of charge. It's open through the end of April. And there's free on-site parking in our parking lot.
And last but not least, where can people find more information about this important exhibit?
So you can go to our website, which is thebmi.org. You can find out information about the exhibit. You can also find information on the various programs we have.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, giving us all this information. We look forward to seeing the exhibit. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. Great to be with you.
Coming up next, Professor Vern joins us to tell us more about how the light rail catenary system works. Now it's time to visit Professor Vern, our eccentric but knowledgeable go-to person on an understanding of all things transit. On this episode, he'll show us how the light rail catenary system works.
Hey, Professor Vern, I finally got the hang of doing these virtual meetings.
Good morning, Administrator. That's great. Hey, Robot. It only took him 9 months.
I didn't hear that.
The professor was saying...
Quiet, Robot. You transistorized tattletale. Administrator, what topic would you like to discuss today?
Professor Vern, I want to learn more about light rail catenary. Not many people understand just how important it is to our light rail system.
Awesome subject. And I just happen to have a catenary mock-up. As you can see, our scale model includes a section of track along with an overhead catenary system. The job of the catenary is to supply electric current to the light rail trains, or LRVs. Let's start with the catenary poles that get placed about every 200 feet along the tracks. Now each catenary pole has a concrete foundation that goes up to 19 feet into the ground. Next, we see that the catenary consists of 2 wires. The top wire is called the messenger, and the bottom wire is called the contact wire because it makes physical contact with the light rail vehicle. We need 2 wires because the amount of power required to energize the LRV is so high. Next, we see that the light rail vehicle has what's called a pantograph that slides along the contact wire to pick up current to power the LRV.
why isn't the catenary wire running straight along the track?
Great question. We need to stagger the orientation of the contact wire so that it sweeps across the pantograph as the LRV travels. If the catenary wire were straight, it would cut through that one spot that it rides across the pantograph. The term catenary refers to the shape a wire makes when supported only at its ends. Now, let's see how the catenary wires are attached to the catenary poles. At the top of the catenary pole, we have a top pipe that connects to the messenger wire through an insulator, and supporting the top pipe at an angle is a strut pipe. There is a registration arm that connects to the contact wire through an insulator.
So what keeps the wire so straight?
Great question. See here at the end, we have a catenary pole with a balance weight assembly. This is where a stack of weights applies extreme tension to the wire, and it also compensates for the expansion and contraction of the wire due to temperature. We use what's called a down guy to anchor the catenary wire into a concrete foundation.
Wow, that's a lot of tension.
The catenary wire needs about 6,000 pounds of tension to remain straight.
So how do we connect the electricity to the catenary?
See here, we have what's called a feeder pole, where huge cables coming from a traction-powered substation run up the pole and exit through a spout and get bolted onto the catenary wires. And I need to also mention that due to the high voltage involved, the catenary parts are very dangerous. And if anyone sees something broken with the catenary, they should stay clear and call 911.
Very good safety point, Professor Byrne. So what kind of safety problems can we have with the catenary?
Well, one problem is that ice can build up on the contact wire and prevent electricity from getting to the LRV. This causes the train to stop.
I suppose that roaming dragon can also be a problem.
That what? Robot, quickly, stun that creature. Well, Administrator, I think it's time I go to the field and show you the real catenary up close.
Excellent suggestion.
Administrator, I'm standing near a portion of the light rail tracks with overhead catenary to power the trains.
Wow, I wish I could get some close-up views of this.
You got it, Administrator. Robot, perform aerial reconnaissance.
In the way.
Where's he going, Professor Byrne?
Oh, Robot is very resourceful. Here we have a catenary pole with the top pipe connected to the messenger wire, and the strut pipe and registration arm connected to the contact wire. Now we see how the pantograph of the light rail vehicle slides across the contact wire to pick up current to power the vehicle. What you see here is the balance weight assembly. Now the weights slide up and down as the catenary wires expand or contract due to temperature in order to maintain up to 6,000 pounds of tension on the catenary wires.
Wow, that's cool. Hey, it looks like Robot is running out of jet fuel.
Uh-oh.
He's gonna crash.
Don't worry, he'll be fine.
Ow.
Even if he crashed, I bought the extended warranty on him, so it's covered.
Okay. Well, I really appreciate this overview of light rail catenary.
Professor, were you concerned about me?
Oh, absolutely! My mechanical marvel!
Oh, brother.
That brings us to the end of another edition of Commuter Connections. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.